This is Allison Dowda from A Double Dose of Dowda, and today I am excited to show you how to create digital versions of your task cards. Now, I will say that while some people do create their task cards in Google Slides, I have discovered that I like to create my task cards in Google Forms or in Boom Cards because either of those platforms are self-grading, and that way students can get feedback quickly. And also, teachers don't have to sort through all of these slides trying to check student work and give student feedback. So that's my reason for choosing my digital format to be Google Forms and Boom Cards. Now, I'll also say that I will not go through every single technical step of publishing and sharing your Boom Cards or your Google Forms. There are lots of great YouTube videos available for that. What I am going to do is I am going to go through how to create slides for digital versions of your print products. So let me give you an idea first of where we are going. So this is a preview of a Google form that I have created based on a task card. Now you will see that at the top I have a header. Then there is a spot for an email address because I do have the settings on this set so that students can only submit one copy of each Google form. And so whenever you have that as a setting, students must sign in with their email address. On every set of digital task cards that I create, I do, even though they have to submit their email addresses, I do still like to have an option for them to put in their first name and last name, because if your students are like mine, sometimes their email address does not tell me who they are. So I always have a slide for typing their first and last name. Next, this is what it looks like on my task cards. So you can see there's the title on every card, there is a question, and there's something, in this case, indicating that they need to put an answer that will go in this block. I have a spot for them to put in their correct answers, and they have to type them. One thing to be aware of is that whenever you are creating things in Google Forms or in Boom Cards, whatever your format is, if it is going to be self-checking, make sure that you set up your questions in a way that hopefully there's only one way for them to write a correct answer. So in this case, I did not want for them to try and figure out how to put a fraction in this space when they were filling in their own answer. And so for that reason, I just have the numerator blank and I give them the denominator. So all that they are going to put in here is the missing number from this box. So you can see that I have several questions like this. And in this case, I have some images for them to choose from because I do like a stacked fraction rather than a horizontal fraction. And then they would go on to the next section. I do like to have sections on my forms so that they are not overwhelmed with too much information all in one place. So this is an overview of what a finished form looks like, and this is what I'm going to show you how to build. I also have Boom Cards. If you are not familiar with Boom Cards are interactive task cards that you can create for students. They are web-based, so the student goes to the link that you provide, and in this case, use the fraction model below to find an equivalent fraction. So they have a spot here where they will be able to type in their correct answer and check. So if you'll notice, these were the same, that was the same first question that was here, except here they have to type in their answer. And in my Boom Card version that you just saw a moment ago, instead there was a box that they physically typed into. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how I create these slides that are easy to plug in to both Google Forms and Boom Cards. So here's how we get started. I am going to pull over a Keynote presentation. Now, I'm a Mac user, so Keynote is Mac's version of PowerPoint. These same principles will still apply using PowerPoint, and I do have an example to pull over in a little bit to show you how that works. So in Keynote, I have a presentation, And you can actually change the size of your slides and your page sizes whenever you are working in a PowerPoint presentation. So that's what we are going to look at right now, is how to do that. Now, for me, I come to Document, Slide Size, and by default, I believe it is usually standard 4:3 ratio, but I select Custom Slide Size. And for custom slide size, you can see that I already have mine set to 1400 points by 1000 points. So this is the correct slide size that I have found that I really like for using my Google Slides. It's enough room that I can put plenty of content in here, but it doesn't get too busy and too overcrowded in the actual Google form or in the Boom card. So here's where I start. For me, what I like to do is I like to begin by adding a shape. So I'm going to add a rectangular shape. And this is going to be what you saw before, where I have, on what the card looked like, I have this wavy border, but for right now, I'm using just this rectangular border. So it's color filled with white, and I will give it a border. Now, for my background image, I like to have something in the background. You can certainly do just a regular color. So I'm going to start with just that. And maybe I want this one to be yellow in the background. Now, one feature that is nice to mention is that within Keynote, and PowerPoint has the same feature, I can right-click on this shape, and down at the bottom I can select Make Editable. And when I select this, you'll notice that these corner points have changed, and now they have a red outlined square. Then I also, when I hover, I have a circle in the middle. What's neat about this, and what I can do with this, is I can click and I can drag these little circles, and they always create new circles with new midpoints. And so I can use these, and now what started off as a square, or rather a rectangle in this case, I can now manipulate, and I can make it a slightly different shape. You can also, just a little note, it's telling me down here as well, that if you double click on one of these circles, it makes it a straight line instead of a curved line, but I'm going to go back to a curved line. So let's say this is what I want my border to look like. Next, I am going to create a header for this particular slide. So it is going to have be a space like this one where I have a spot where my title is going to be visible. So I'm going to select my shape, and again, I'm going to start with a rectangle, this time with rounded corners. And I am going to change my style on this one and make it filled with black. And maybe I want my corners a little more rounded on this one. I just like the look of that. And now I am just going to type title and adjust the font. So now my title is in this box. All right, next I am ready to revisit my printed version of my task cards. And so you can see my task cards here, and I am going to copy and paste this content into my new card. Now, I can do all of it at once, but what I have found is, for me, I do prefer to just go ahead and do kind of a piece by piece on this one. And the reason, rather than selecting a lot of it, is you can see whenever I paste it over, the size is much smaller than what I'm going to want it to be. And so for me, I do like to just take a few minutes and to just go ahead and revise this to how I want it to be. And I know this is a small thing, but seeing these colors not coordinating is really bothering me a little bit. So I am going to go ahead and change this quickly so that it's a little less contrast. Okay, so here you can see just the basic principle of how I went from taking and copying and pasting from my original printed task cards here onto my digital task cards. And you can do any rearranging and things that you would like. You can see that what I did was on this one, I have my same thing that we talked about, my border, my header, my title. I have the text here. I did change the colors and things to go along with what I wanted. And then on this one thing to be mindful of is whenever you are creating something in Google Forms, in this situation, you want to make sure that students are very clear on what it is that you are asking. So for them, I told them that I wanted them to find an equivalent fraction, and all that I'm looking for is just this part that's in a box. So what I did for this one was I just created another shape tool. I did a rectangle and I filled it with a question mark and put it on top. I did the same thing for these other task cards, where this one is asking them to use a number line. So I copy and pasted the text as well as the number line. And then this one is a word problem, and I copied and pasted the word problem. So you can see what this looks like here. Now, the next step, once we have this all set and looking like you want it to look, the next thing to do is to export this to images. So I am going to go to the top of Keynote. It's out of your view right now, but I go to File, Export to, and Images. Now, this is just the simplest way to do this. Some people have other ways as well, and I actually have a different way that I will do this to get really crisp pictures sometimes. But for Google Forms, this really does work well enough, and the pictures are crisp enough. So I select Next, and I tell it where to go, and I click Export. So this is going to create a folder on my desktop with this title. So now that our cards are all ready with our questions on them, obviously you would have more than 3, but that's just what I'm including for this little sample. I want you to see how to do the Google Form headers. Now, Google Form headers, this is the same thing. Remember what this was this is what appeared across the top of my Google Form, just with the name of it on there. There are some default headers that you can choose from and you can customize within Google Forms, but I like to create my own so that my title is very clear on there. So on this one, you can see this is the same sort of thing as before. And what I tend to do just as a time saver is I have one file that I just duplicate my slides, and all of my headers are all in one file. But you can see, just like before, we did a custom slide size. The custom slide size that I have found that I like for my Google Forms task card headers is 1600 by 400. So that same thing where you do a custom slide size. And I will show you how to do that in PowerPoint in just a moment also. So this is what I do. Same thing, just a background color or image, a rectangle on top, and then my text above that. One last thing that I will say that I like to have is for my name slides. Same as before, with my name slide, I have the same file and I just continue to duplicate. But on this one, I don't need very much space to give them these instructions to type your first and last name. And so for this one, I do keep this one much smaller. And you can see over here, the size that I use for that particular question is 1024 by 200. So that's my custom slide size when I'm just asking for a name. And if you have shorter questions, and if this is all the space that you need, you can certainly resize your questions and make them all this size. But for me, oftentimes I have images or other things included, and so I need that larger space. But you can always play around with that custom slide size and just see what works for yours. Same as the others, I go to File and I export, and I create a folder that has these images in it. And that's what I pull from when I am working in Google Forms. So lastly, what I want to show you is what this looks like in PowerPoint. So if you are working in PowerPoint, it will look slightly different, but it's not too much. So in this case, in order to change the page size, I go to Design, and select Slide Size, Page Setup, and you can see where you can customize the width and height. Now, I typically, in Keynote, I use pixels, and in this case, this one's asking you for inches. So just a rule of thumb in general, what will typically work for you is if you have, say, a piece of paper that is 8.5 by 11 inches, in pixels, that's 850 by 1100. So you just move your decimal a little bit, but the ratio is going to be pretty close to the same. So in this case, it was pretty close to what I was working with, 1422 by 278. So I'm going to select OK on that one. And I do want to show you in this case, how you can also make your rectangles or other shapes editable and customize those a little bit as well if you want some wave to it. So I clicked on that rectangle and I'm going to right click, and I have the option here to edit points. And so when I click on edit points, I can see when I hover, a line has appeared. And so, and maybe I shouldn't have said that, well, a line appeared, but there was something underneath my cursor that I could tell was there in that target area. And so that lets you edit as well. And you have some options here to make something a smooth point or a straight point in the paths and things like that as well. But you can certainly do any editing that you would like of that rectangle as well. And just like with Keynote, when you want to export these to images, you go to File. In this case, we are going to click Export. And it's going to save it to our desktop by default. File format, it's going to by default format this exported file as a PDF. But from this drop-down menu, you can see when you scroll that you also have options for a PNG or a JPEG. Those are both image files, and so you could select JPEG, and it's going to, you have the option to save every slide as a JPEG or save only the current slide. It confirms your sizes, and you would click Export on that, and it would create a folder on your desktop as well. So that is what it looks like in PowerPoint, just so you have an idea there. All right, our next step is going to be now to take these images that we have created and that we have exported, and we are going to put them in our Google Forms presentation. So let me clear a little bit of space here with these guys. And now when I am on my Google form, again, I'm not going to go over all of the details for everything for how to create Google Forms and things, but I will let you see how some of this works. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to adjust my header. So I can go to Customize Theme, and here it tells me that I have an image uploaded. If I didn't have an image uploaded, it would give me this option to choose image. This is where you can see different headers that are already available within Google Forms. If there's not something there that you want, or if you have created your own, you go to Upload, Browse, and you locate the file that you were using and that you had saved. And you would select OK. So that's how you get your header. Then the next part that I want to show you is for each question. And on this one, I am going to delete this particular picture that I have. All right, so what I like to do is in my Google Forms, I do not like to have anything in this question box. Instead, I'm going to directly insert, just like on this one, I'm going to directly insert that image that I just created and exported. So to do that, and to not have any text here, I am going to select, when I hover, I can select this image icon. And I am going to upload from my computer. So when I browse, I had a folder on my desktop that I created with my JPEGs. So I navigate to that and upload. And so now you can see my image is here. I don't have a need to put anything in my question box. Now, below this, if you aren't familiar, then in settings, you can create a quiz by going to that settings cog, quizzes, make this a quiz. Now, that is the reason that I have this option here for answer key. Whenever I've clicked on this question, I have an answer key where I have put in my accepted answers and what would be correct. So now you just continue this process to go through and create your form with all of your questions. Again, I'm not going over the technical details of how to do that right now. Now that you can see how to create a Google form with these slides, what I'd like to show you next is how to convert these same slides so that you can use them for boom cards. So for a boom card, again, I'm not going to go over all of the details of everything. There are some great videos out there that are available. But what I will show you is in this case, I am going to do my new card from an image. I'm going to pull in my card and select OK. And now my image is the background for this card. And if I want to have a fill in the blank, what I do is I grab from fill in the blank, drag it over. I can resize this box so easily. I know that looks tiny. And then I put my correct answer on here, which I'm pretty sure I recall was 4. I didn't really look at the card. You can adjust your font size, your font face. So next I'm going to change my font here, and I think about 20 should work on my font. And then you'll notice that I can still see the question mark in the background that I was covering up. And so to change that, I'm going to go over here to background and color, and I'm just going to make a white background. So now you can't even see that the question mark was there. So in this case, this one is not perfect, but this is just a quick little mock-up so you can see how this works. One thing that I want you to see is that sometimes you will have to change your Google Form cards slightly. So for instance, on this one. So on this one, I have a word problem that in the Google Form, I expected them to write in their correct answer. But in this case, I don't really like for students to write in their fractions. Sometimes they have trouble with the backspace versus the front space. And so in this case, what I wanted to do was create a multiple choice. So I would drag over my multiple choice element to do that. But when we look at these cards, what I want you to see, what I did differently here was I used the same Google Form cards, but I just made a copy of all of my Google Form cards. I duplicated them. So now, in this case, what I can do is in that duplicate version, I'm just going to squeeze over my text some. And I have learned that you definitely need to expect the boom elements to take more space than what you maybe think they should take. So in this case, let's say that I'm going with this, and I'm going to have this, again, a mock-up, so this is not going to be exactly perfect. But now I have this, and I have my space here that I can add in my multiple choice element. All right, so that is what it looks like for the boom cards. Again, I'm not going to go over all the details to complete those steps and to publish those for students. There are lots of great resources available. But I hope that this video has helped you feel better about how to convert printed task cards to Google Forms or boom cards or both so that they can be used as self-graded digital learning tools.
If you have more questions or need help figuring out how to access Google Forms, change a form's settings, share forms with students with and without Google Classroom, view responses from students, and more, then go to our Teachers Pay Teachers store, linked below, and check out our step-by-step and video tutorials. If you are a Teachers Pay Teachers seller, great news! We have these products in our store that you can purchase and drop these help guides into products that you sell to teachers from your own Teachers Pay Teachers store. Thanks for watching this video from A Double Dose of Data. If you liked this video and would like to see more like this, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, you can join our email list, linked below, so that you can know about other tips, tricks, and sales that we have from time to time. Thanks again for watching.